But I'll talk about the history of Nintendo now, just as a wee fucking break it down, because I'm at 23 minutes, and I suppose I could waste 5, 10 minutes talking about this. But Nintendo started off as a trading company, trading card company, way back, fucking almost over 100 years ago, and soon after they started doing work with Disney, and early on in Nintendo's life, they realised that the power of having characters, because their sales boosted so much over that there, and they were a small time company. They dealt in trading cards, and they made cards for Disney and stuff like that there. But then after a while, then they moved on to fucking like novelty toys. One of the famous novelty toys they released in the 60s was called the Love Tester. And then they made a game in, I think it was called Radar Scope. That was the first game Nintendo ever made. It was an absolute flop. So there was a guy working in the company, he was actually an artist. This guy's the fucking main man in video gaming, like, his name was Shigeru Miyamoto. He actually joined Nintendo because he thought he was going to be able to design like like fucking toys for like play parks and stuff. He was interested in that, but they decided to give him a fucking spin at inventing a video game, because Radar Scope went down the pan, nobody wanted to play it, and he came up with Donkey Kong, and Donkey Kong made like something like fucking $20 million in quarters in its first 3 years. Getting released, it was an absolute fucking storm it had. Of course, it had Mario going up the fucking levels. They get Princess Pauline out of the fucking trap by the big Donkey Kong. And funnily enough, how he got the name was he read in an English dictionary that an English donkey means foolish. But when he released a game in America called Donkey Kong, Americans didn't have a clue, because it was more of a Cockney fucking saying, you know what I mean? And they were like, what the fuck sort of name's that? But that's where the name came from. And then after that, then fucking Nintendo sort of took off, got into Super Mario Bros. And the NES sort of came around the same time as Donkey Kong. And they just blew people's fucking minds. I read a great book about the history of Nintendo. If you want to read it, it's by a guy called David Sheff, and it's called Game Over. It's the best book you'll ever read about video gaming. It's fucking brilliant, but it tells you in that book about how they tried to get the NES in New York City and nobody wanted to buy it, because at the time Atari crashed the video game industry and video games were dead. But Nintendo thought that they'd made this wacky product and made it like a VHS cassette, with a flip up lid and all. They thought they could appeal to a wider market if they made it white and made it more streamlined and like kind of Japanese age. They brought it to New York, hardly anybody bought it. They pushed it again, then dropped the price. It started taking off like wildfire. And anybody that remembers being back in those early Nintendo days, it was bliss. It turned me into a fucking proper addict, like. And they excelled. Sega came on the fucking bandwagon, tried to battle them a lot. In the early days, the Master System was a failure. Me personally, I think the Master System was a better system than the NES, even though the NES has more standout classics. Personally, if I was a kid, I would have liked to have had a Master System. I used to always play at my friend's house and it was brilliant. But then that's failed, and then of course the big war between Sega and the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo came. Now you all probably remember, if you're about my age at school, we all would have been drawing fucking drawings in school of like Sonic fighting fucking Mario and doing Mortal Kombat death moves to him and stuff. That was a whole fashion at the time. Fucking great video games were great. Nintendo was fucking great. I was so loyal to that company, but they just keep shitting on their customers, and I got sick of them. In fact, after Gunpei Yokoi died, the inventor of the Game Boy, he died in a tragic car accident in 1989. Or not 1989, 1995 or something it was. He was the inventor of the Game Boy, but and the Game and Watch systems, which were before the NES actually. But once Gunpei Yokoi and Shigeru Miyamoto sort of phased out of Nintendo, took a back seat, they haven't been the same company and they haven't been the same innovations. The GameCube was cool, the N64 is a brilliant console, I love my N64, but they went downhill. I hear the Switch is great and I hear Breath of the Wild is great. Maybe I'll get round to playing modern games, but I'm sort of stuck in the fucking past with all that there stuff, you know. I love playing old, retro, pixelated games. I love all that fucking Space Invaders and Centipede and Grabda. There's a game you want to play. Get your emulation rocking and play Grabda. It's an arcade game. Hard as fuck. See when you get into it, it is addictive as shite. Hey. It is addictive as shite. But folks, I think that's what I'll do. I'll leave it at that there now. I hope you enjoyed that.